Hi, I'm Deadforge. Welcome to the 7th episode of Quad Damage, the greatest boomer shooter podcast in the world. And today we're joined by High Functioning Medium.
Hey!
Robert from HyperVerse. And
hello.
Of course, our guest today, Awesreek.
Hello.
All right. Now.
What the
Hold on. Let's get booming, baby.
Oh dear, Harry.
I got that all over my phone
you
too.
You practiced that, didn't you?
I didn't. That was right on the spot. That's why I f***ed it up. All right, before we fully get hopped in and everything, I want to do a little short announcement thing, which will probably be something that we're going to do in the future. But the Painkiller series and the Half-Life series are both on a pretty big sale right now on Steam. I grabbed the Painkiller series and the Half-Life series, actually, because I had Half-Life Source, and that's like the worst version of it. So grabbed the whole Half-Life series for $3, Painkiller series for $6. Definitely go do that. I've been playing Painkiller Black Edition, fantastic. Dead Island 2 is on Game Pass. Definitely go play that if you have Game Pass, and if you don't, go buy Game Pass and play it. And we got some new trailers that dropped this week. We got Squirrel with a Gun, which just looks stupid and fun.
Exactly.
It's literally a squirrel with a big ass gun, and it looks great. And then we have the Phantom Fury release day announcement trailer, which is set for April 23rd. That looks fantastic. From a Duke-like to a Half-like. And we have the Shadows of the Damned new trailer about the remaster. Now let's get into playing some Viscerafest and allow Awesreek to give us the rundown on the game's long development, as well as the development and the time for Chapter 3 and when that's coming out, or any information you can give on that. And of course, the visual overhaul of prior chapters, which me and you spoke about once before.
There's more than the visual overhauls, but
I know, yeah, there's a lot of overhauls,
I need you to do me a favor, pause the game.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'm not touching anything.
No, pause the game.
All right, okay, yeah.
Go to the options menu.
Options.
Go to gameplay.
Yeah.
Change difficulty.
Oh, come on, man.
No. Go to change difficulty. Okay, now hit back. Go to change difficulty.
What
you like
what
that?
Are you setting me up for?
Okay, so if you missed it, so every time you open the difficulty menu in the game,
it's always a different name.
Has there are different names for the difficulty settings. So
on the way, yes.
Yeah. So like you have here, you have neophyte, average mercenary, trained killer, decorated hitman, death incarnate. There's ones that are references to Doom. There's ones that are references to Doom 64. There are totally original ones. I think the final version of the game, it actually has more than the version of the game you're playing. I think there are 35 sets of different difficulty names that will come up. So there's it's 35 sets of 5 difficulty names that change every time you open the game.
Why start on medium?
Why? So that's a funny story. So originally the game. So for anyone who doesn't know what he's talking about, so the game's difficulty settings are ignoring the funny names. There's medium, hard, brutal, extreme, and nightmare. Originally, when we released the initial demo, the difficulty settings were easy, medium, hard, brutal, and extreme. The reason why we changed that is because we had a bunch of 5-year-olds who were so filled with pride that they could not bring themselves to play on a difficulty called easy. And so we decided that we would pander to that crowd of toddlers by reducing by calling easy medium so that their little hearts wouldn't be bruised by being forced to play on a difficulty called easy.
I thought I was playing on medium, but it turns out I'm playing on hard. I actually started the game on hard. Yeah. It's actually a good time though.
Yeah, I think it's really. I think it's really stupid that like. I mean, it's silly. My dad's cat Teddy is trying to butt in on the conversation.
It's all right. We'll interview him too.
So this is Teddy Bear. He's a good little boy.
Oh crap!
You just punched the barrel.
I know it's a red barrel. You'd think I'd know better, but I thought there was ammo in there.
Yeah. So, So, what was I gonna say? My dad's cat, like, completely.
You were talking about difficulty.
Yeah, with difficulty, game development, stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
doing it for the kids.
Yeah, but basically, like, it's just a case of, like, you know, like I tell people, like, I didn't put the easy difficulty in the game so that nobody would play it. You know, and then you have a lot of people who, because Viscerafest is a retro shooter, they assume that they can run into it and play it like every other retro shooter they've ever touched. You have to shoot that barrel. But yeah, they assume that they can run into Viscerafest and play it like any other shooter they've ever played. And when they can't do that and they're punished for doing that, you know, they get all angry and throw a hissy fit. So as a consequence of that, we've kind of, and you might have noticed it when you booted up the game, we've had to like basically do everything we can to scream at the player, it's okay if you're bad at the game, play it on an easier difficulty.
That's actually a funny thing is that that kind of stuff, I think when I talked to you in the past, I mentioned that, but it was like, I don't like the stopping you in your place pop-up tutorials. I really don't. I've never been a fan. I didn't like him in this case. I don't like him in any case. It's just annoying. But the thing is, like when I was talking to you before, it makes sense because sometimes people literally need you to like ram the tutorial down their throat because sometimes people don't get how a game functions. It's kind of like Medium. You were talking about playing Callisto earlier on Twitter, and Callisto is one of those games that they literally give you 3 different kinds of tutorials on how to use the melee system. They give you a like quick time event, they give you a pop-up text, and then they give you like an actual like in-game example of a moment you can use it. And that's like the number one thing everyone complained about. It's like it'd be like if someone was playing this game and you said the unskippable beginning, hey, this game is really hard. You need to play it on a lower difficulty than you would typically play it on. But
you can skip it.
Wow.
Holding the escape key.
I didn't know that. Now I know, thank God, because that takes so long. Okay, I didn't know that.
I had an option to turn that off, by the way.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no, I didn't know that, but that is very, very good to know. Yeah, okay, because it takes forever to get through when you've rewatching it.
You're playing with the Halloween stuff on. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, the Halloween event.
Say, what's the pumpkin for? Yeah,
it's the Halloween event.
You're playing with the Halloween content in it.
You can turn it off in the extras or whatever.
Yes.
So
you
gotta...
We'll leave it on. It's fine.
Halloween.
Right.
No.
Okay. Yeah. No. It's a tutorial for viewers. Show them how to change it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you go to options. I mean, it's usually off by default. So you go to options. I think it's under graphics. Or video,
it's graphics.
And then it'll be like under seasonal. Yeah. So right there, seasonal.
Right, Halloween.
I thought you were gonna have a Valentine's Day seasonal theme when you did that update, but
so we might down the line.
Yeah,
we might. We'll probably implement more seasonal stuff down the line. It's just a case of what's available right now. But yeah, for the tutorial discussion, though, the big thing, particularly with Viscerafest, and I actually hate the way we're handling tutorials now. So don't worry, I'm going to be giving you a ton of tips on how to actually play the game.
All right, but, I need it.
But the problem, the tutorials.
Who needs tutorials?
I'm going to be honest, they totally suck. The problem specifically with Viscerafest, though, and when it comes to the context of tutorialization, is that we're dealing with a game that demands you play a very specific way.
Yeah.
And in that context, you need to be informing the player and adequately informing the player on how they should be approaching a game. You kind of have to baby them to a certain extent.
Yeah. Was that always something that you wanted in there? Was like just like the difficulty? Because it's kind of like you have to play loose, but you have to play tactical at the same time. So it's like a So you have to play fast.
I'll get to that question in a second. But when it comes to the tutorialization, we we're completely changing how we handle it. So there are a couple of problems I have with the way it's set up right now. First of all, you have the annoying fact of you'll walk into a middle. Basically, you walk into an invisible wall and a tutorial pops up, right? And it's very abrupt and very annoying because it freezes you in a moment where it's like you're not like right there. It's like you're not expecting a tutorial to just pop up in your face right there. Right. And it kind of comes off as grating, and it like immediately encourages the player to like skip it. Because it's like you're not expecting it. It's irritating.
Yeah, you're impeding my progress, kind of thing.
A lot of the way, kind of thing.
Yeah. So one of the things we've done is we're actually swapping it out. So no longer is it just going to be a case of you walk into an invisible wall and the tutorial pops up. Now there are going to be actual pickups in the level. They're like question mark pickups that you'll see, and you go, "Hey, that's a tutorial pickup. I'll walk over there, and I will volitionally choose to engage with this tutorial."
I feel like there's another game that I played that did something a lot like that, and I can't remember what it was.
Yeah. Yeah. And then another thing we're doing, there's a bunch of stuff we're doing. We're adding so another problem you run into is that when you just have text being the means by which you're explaining something to a player, it's not that engaging. It's not that interesting, especially if it's like a long paragraph. Most players are here to like play the game. And so they're like, I don't want to sit here and read. I just want to play the thing. Now, some of that is kind of just an inevitable problem of having to teach the player. So it's somewhat unavoidable to a certain extent. But one of the things we're going to be doing is we're going to be implementing these little short gameplay clips into the tutorial sections that'll basically show me doing the thing I'm telling you to do. So that way, like, you can kind of visually get an idea of like, okay, well, this is kind of about what the game is trying to tell me to do. And we're also breaking it up so that each tutorial section is more cordoned off into it's like, hey, here's the little section where we're going to teach you about dashing. Here's the little tutorial section where we're going to teach you about saving. Here's the little tutorial section where we're going to teach you about shielded enemies. So one of the things that's changing, and you kind of referenced it earlier, is the entire tutorial level has been completely remade top to bottom. And the same is actually going to be true of most of Chapter 1. Most of the Chapter 1 levels, they're going to be recognizable for like what you can play currently.
Is your progress going to stay the same once Chapter 3 releases?
Sorry?
Your progress, game progress, since you're going to overhaul so much, it's going to reset?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a... I'll get to that in a second.
What's the
good. Game engine? What is the game engine?
Huh? Is the game engine what?
He was asking what game engine is.
What?
Oh, Unity.
Okay. Because I know GZ Doom has an issue with saves when you update it.
No, so the reason why... So, I mean, a lot of that will just depend on how you handle saving. But one of the things is that because so much is changing, like, okay, let me quickly go over all of, like, at least a brief summary view of what's changing to give you guys an idea of why we're not maintaining the save progress over to the full release.
Yeah.
So, all of the levels of Chapter 1 are being completely remade top to bottom. They are brand new levels. They contain new story content. They contain there are brand new encounters.
Go through
there are brand
Chapter
new
1
enemies that are introduced into Chapter 1. There are brand new enemies that are actually introduced into Chapter 2 as well. The entire pacing of the game is changing. All of the game's balancing is completely changing top to bottom. The game's arsenal has been heavily modified and overhauled to the point where certain weapons just function completely differently now. There's we introduced some enemies, some of the old enemies have brand new abilities and attacks that they didn't have before. Some enemies, we introduced a new so we had an old category of enemies we referred to as melee resistant. How the melee resistant enemies function has been like radically changed and far more fleshed out than it was in the older versions. How we handle combat encounters has completely changed. Basically there's almost nothing. Oh, we completely redid the gore system. Basically nothing is the same anymore. It's like fundamentally
there's a lot of crazy like messed up stuff like that in this game. It's fantastic.
You're a better man than I punched him immediately.
Same.
I felt bad because it looks like it's a girl. I thought that it was a girl, so I was like, I can't.
He's not there anymore. It's an alien
Such
now.
a simp.
Can I?
Yeah, I mean, she's
do
dead.
it. Just do it. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, you get help from doing it. So.
Yeah. That's the one incentive you have to use melee. Is like it's kind of like using the chainsaw in like Doom 2016 or something. Kind of not identical to that, but it's similar.
You are playing on an easier difficulty, so you don't need to use the melee as much. Yeah, but it's definitely a good habit to get into.
I can tell you right now, example, just from his gameplay on medium, is night and day compared to me playing on hard. So
yeah. I will say, so that enemy you just shot, typically we balance the game in such a way where that's an enemy you don't want to shoot. Yep. So if you hold the right mouse button, if you hold it down, you'll charge an uppercut, and that will do double the damage, and that attack pierces through multiple enemies when you throw the punch.
Yeah. Also, that's the save beacon, you guys. That's the save beacon that I was talking about earlier before Awesreek.
Yeah, so the game has
by accident. Okay.
Save game.
Instinct.
F6. F6.
I was telling them how you kind of have to strategically place your beacons, and I was telling them about a situation where I was playing through a level and I had a few built up, and I made it to like a mini boss, and when you get to the boss, you can't place one down. But I didn't know that was about to happen because I was being too stingy with it. And then I got there, fought it, died, then had to replay the level, and I was like, no. And then I was like more
That's not right. The game should have auto-saved at the beginning of a boss fight.
Really? All of them?
Yeah.
I know the one that I'm on right now, it did that.
It's not
well, maybe it was close to one or something like that.
Can I talk about spoilers?
Yeah, go for it.
It's your game.
It's not the Shambler, is it?
No.
Then I don't know that that's a mini boss because that's the only mini boss in the game.
Huh? I don't know then.
I mean, there's a mini boss in Chapter 3, and there may or may not be a mini boss in Chapter 1 now in the new version of the game that's not currently in the version of the game you guys
maybe
have.
I'm thinking of something that might. Well, okay, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't necessarily a boss. It was just an enemy introduction or something that was like framed as if it was a boss.
So, are you at the first level of Chapter 2? Is that what you're referring to? No, not you. Teddy bear.
Yeah. You're talking to Deadforge, yeah.
Me, yeah. I'm not 100%. I think I'm somewhere in there, yeah.
Okay, I was going to ask if it was the Gruge, or it's called the Arachnospud if we're talking about the enemy type names.
Yeah.
He's a big brown potato-looking guy who fires like a burst of homing missiles.
I think that might be it, yeah.
Yeah, so that's the beginning of Chapter 2. But yeah, that's not a mini boss. It's just a normal enemy.
Okay. Well,
Viscerafest.
Yeah, so...
But yeah, I don't know. I could be getting messed up, but before we continue, Robert, turn around after you kill that enemy.
I'll hold him for you, Awesreek.
All right, go to the wall over there. Go to the wall over there. Turn around.
Go what?
Left, right there. Go interact with the wall. Right there, right in front of you. Right to your right.
Not that wall.
Yeah. Right there, the one right there. Yep. The Doom reference. Doom reference.
Yeah. So, all right. So if they've got those lines on the wall, it's kind of like Doom or Quake or whatever, where it's kind of a lot of them. There are some like that where you can. It's like they look different than the other texture kind of thing.
Yeah. So basically, any wall that has a depressed surface into it is usually going to, like, basically any secret is going to have like a depressed wall surface into it.
Yeah. That
you can sort of identify. But the other thing is your crosshair changes when you go over something that you can interact with. So you don't have to wall hump.
Yeah, that's true.
So like you go up to that green key door and the crosshair changes color and
I noticed that before. Yeah.
So to get to your question about the difficulty, though, that you asked like 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think when I was originally designing older versions of the game, kind of the idea was I wanted to make a game that was as hard as blood, because around the time when I say as hard as blood, like that means something, but so when I'm trying to think. My brain just died. So around 2016 or 2015, 2016, around the era where I was kind of like going in that direction of trying to make a game that was about as challenging as Blood, my thought process at the time was you had like the beginning of the retro shooter resurgence coming up, right?
Yeah.
You had games like Dusk and a Medieval kind of starting to come into the limelight at this point. And a lot of the New Blood games especially were pretty forgiving as far as difficulty goes.
I mean, I would say Dusk is like actually kind of on the easier side. I mean, as you get further in, it's can have challenge, but it's definitely on the easier side of those kind of games.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But I wanted to make a game. I mean, Viscerafest first and foremost is a game that I designed to cater to my sensibilities and what I enjoy in games. So kind of around the time, the initial thought process was, I want to make a game as difficult as Blood. Teddy Bear, I swear to God, I am going to sit on you.
Jump over those boxes in the corner there. I think there's something behind there.
I've already collected it. I'm lost.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So you have a green key, and there's a green key door in the hallway.
Go back that way.
Next to you.
Go back that way, and there's a green key door.
I just did that. Oh, now it opens.
Yeah, I noticed yesterday there was a little bit of trouble with some of the activation too. Every now and again, it just respond.
Yeah.
So
what you gonna do?
But as the game,
you were saying,
yeah. But as the game's development progressed, and as the game kind of came out, and people started playing it, I realized that it's basically my intent was, hey, unlike Blood, which has some just downright awful difficulty pacing, we're going to build up to our challenge, right? We're going to have the beginning of the game be easy, and as it progresses, it's going to get harder, like an intelligently designed video game. And then we released our demo. And, we released what in my mind was something that was pretty easy. And we actually, before we released the demo in 2020, I had... We shuffled it around to a few people to sort of get like, hey, can we get some like testing quick just to make sure that we don't release a completely broken mess onto the unsuspecting public, right? So let's have some like random Joes in our Discord test the game for us real quick. And like immediately they were like basically running into the game like it was a brick wall. And what in my mind had been balanced to be pretty easy and pretty forgiving, they were like genuinely fighting and struggling to even get past like the first couple of levels.
Right.
And as a consequence of that, I was like, well, let's panic and nerf everything.
As a good developer does.
Yes. Like, let's just make sure, like, like the average Joe can actually beat this for our demo.
Now, do you think that was an issue of people going into the demo not knowing what to expect, or just people being stubborn and choosing to not play it as strategically as you should, or what do you think about that?
I think there are a couple of issues. Initially, I wanted to be very, very, light with our tutorialization. The old version of the game, basically all the tutorials were like some text that briefly pop up on screen. Most people didn't even notice that the text was there. It was something that most people just missed, despite the fact that it was like literally center screen. I don't know how they didn't notice it was there, but they didn't.
It's just the people not wanting to read a tutorial, I guess.
Probably that.
It's kind of like now when it pops up, people are like spamming the E button to get out of there.
Yeah. It's not even that, because it didn't even freeze or pause the game at that point. It was just some text that like briefly appeared on screen while you were playing the game, like, hey, press E to open doors, or whatever it happens to be. So we did that. We released that version of the game. And I think the biggest issue we saw was just people missing that tutorials were there. But I think the bigger issue really is just people aren't used to having, I put this. So, I mean, really, let's just talk about like what I personally love about retro shooters in general. To me, what's great and what I love about retro shooters in general is that they walk this very fine line of demanding, how I put this, of demanding that you think and engage with their systems, whilst also it's sort of like a combination of like a strategy game and a fast-paced like mindless action game. It's sort of a hybrid between those two, where it's like, hey, there's resource management, and there's enemy and target prioritization, and there's using this weapon against this enemy, and all these sort of things. There's an exit like right in front of you through that hallway. There's like a big red exit sign.
Yeah, I think you're going to want to go back to the other elevator for that power cell.
Yeah.
Other elevator.
The what? What?
So
that's the one that came through.
I mean, you can't see my hands as I'm pointing at the screen. I don't know why I'm pointing at the screen.
Yeah. Leave the room, go back to the other elevator.
So get out of this elevator. That hallway right in front of you. To your left now, the crosshair. There's a hallway right there. Yep. Exit sign. Yeah. This area, I will admit, is pretty poorly designed. And there's a reason why I completely remade this level.
I noticed that little receptacle is really touchy about
you're too close
to power cell.
I'm too close. Right there. Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Again, there's a reason why some of these levels have gotten remade. This level's ancient. This level's probably.
So once you've said what you were going to say, sorry I interrupted. I just wanted to ask, what was your inspiration with the visual design of this? Because you mentioned blood before, so
it wasn't retro shooters.
Really?
Was it like Stone?
Yeah. So what I love about retro shooters is that they're a hybrid of like basically a fast-paced mindless action game and like a strategy game. But what typically happens is, whilst a lot of retro shooters have the systems to support like strategic thinking, to support like enemy prioritization and target prioritization and all this stuff, whilst they have the systems necessary to really ask you and push you to engage with their systems, games like Doom, you can kind of just ignore all that stuff. It's very easy to just play it like a mindless action game, because whilst they have the systems to support that, they don't really take advantage of them. And Viscerafest is a game where I basically wanted to take everything I loved about first-person, about the retro shooter subgenre, and I wanted to push all that stuff to the forefront. You know, I wanted this to be a game where you had to think about and manage your resources. I wanted this to be a game where you had to be aggressive and you had to push. And I wanted this to be a game where you have to handle target prioritization and all this stuff. And in that, most people aren't used to being forced to do that stuff.
Yeah, and I think you definitely achieved that, though. I do think you achieved that, because it's very fast, it's very strategic, it's very something simple like that, like he stopped for a split second dead.
So
you have to stay on your feet.
So you kind of have to bunny hop in this game, HyperVerse.
Are you going to talk about the speed boost and damage reduction?
So bunny hopping cuts any damage you take in half. And also don't shoot that guy. He's an NPC. You can punch him, but you're wasting ammo by doing that.
Crap. I thought he was an enemy waiting
if you
for
can
me.
Punch, always punch first. It's too big.
Always punch.
Yeah. So I wanted to create a game where you had to engage with these systems. And I think people just aren't used to being asked to exercise this kind of muscle memory, to thinking about, like, they go into Viscerafest thinking this is just a mindless action game. And I can play it like it's just a mindless action game, and they get punished for that. And then they think, oh, the game's unfair, oh, the game's too hard, oh, the game's too brutal. When it's like, really, if like you would just and a part of that, I think, again, it's one of the reasons why how we handle tutorialization is so important. Because this happens with every game. Everybody walks into a game and they have a certain number of presuppositions about, hey, how is this going to play? What game am I playing? What kind of experience am I going to have? They walk in with certain expectations that they are projecting onto the experience, and they're saying, hey, this is the kind of game I'm playing, and it's the responsibility of the developers to take those presuppositions and either affirm them if that is the kind of game you're playing, or to throw them in the garbage and tell you, no, this is how you need to actually engage with
it obviously comes down to like a marketing thing, but also, people can kind of just like look over what you say as well. So
Absolutely.
when it comes to like someone just visually looking at it, right, they're probably thinking, okay, Quake build engine type stuff, maybe Doom, whatever. So it's fast. I got to play fast, but I don't really have to worry too much. I can just kind of use my old strategies. But like, a lot of times the second you stop moving, you're dead. If you're not playing like strategically, whether it comes to your checkpoints or your weapons or, how you enter a room and just being very cautious, it can screw you over really quick. But at the same time, once you get into a solid, just rhythm of playing the game and you figure out the loop and you figure out how it works, dude, it is addicting. I mean, when I first played it, I remember the secret. Yeah, be prepared. Whenever I first started playing the game, dude, I sat there for probably 5 hours playing it nonstop. Like, I played the crap out of it. I kind of went away from it for a while, but it's a blast. I got to get back into it again.
Those barrels, baby.
Yeah.
Quad damage, yeah.
Yeah, so the Deus Mortis is actually a great example of how the arsenal has changed since this version.
Yeah.
So the version of the quad shotgun you have right now is sort of an intermediary version. We were in the middle of changing it. I should mention this build of the game is over a year old. But so we were in a transitionary point with the quad shotgun at this point in development. And in the current build of the game, the way the quad shotgun works is that if you tap the firing button once, it will shoot the gun, obviously. But if you tap the firing button again, it will call the bullets back to you. Nice. And so you can basically use it as like a boomerang bullets, effectively, where the idea is that the gun has magnetic rounds. And so you fire the gun once, and then you can call them back to you, effectively allowing you to hit one enemy multiple times with the same projectiles.
Is that how it is currently?
Yes, that's how it is in the current development version.
I actually forgot about that feature. That'll help me with the boss I'm on.
That's not in this version.
Okay.
Here it just functions like a normal quad barrel.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so like
that's in the final release version or chapter 3 version.
Yeah. So like I said, it's an example of like something that has changed from this version with the weapons. So it's like a completely new ability that the weapon has. Gotcha. And I should mention, so the way it works is if you tap the left mouse button once, it'll fire. If you tap it again, it'll call them back to you. If you hold the left mouse button, it will fire and then reload the gun, and then you can just shoot again without having to call the bullets back to you.
Okay.
But to answer your question about the game's art direction, which has also undergone some major revisions since the time of this version of the game, or not revisions, a lot of stuff has just been improved. It's the same art style, but a lot of it just looks better because there's some stuff in this older version of the game that's pretty visually rough. Like the levels in Chapter 1. But regardless, so the primary sources of inspiration visually for the game, so obviously we reference old school first-person shooters in that we're using sprites in 3D environments. But that's the point at which the inspiration from retro shooters actually stops. The primary source of artistic inspiration for the game would be titles like Hyper Light Drifter or Fez or basically modern pixel art games. We're not trying to make a game that looks... We're not. So you have to go back to the main starting area. You have the green key, and there's a green key door in the main central hub.
Right, what?
So that door through there. There's a switch to your left. Your left.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
All right. So yeah.
Carry on.
Yeah. So basically, and again, some of the level design. There's reasons why we're updating these. So, but the actual art direction primarily, I didn't want to make a game that looked like an old school retro first person shooter. I wanted to make a game that looked kind of like a modern pixel art game. And there's a very clear distinction in terms of the overall aesthetics of how a game in the 90s that used pixel art versus how a modern game looks that uses pixel art. There's a lot more modern games they'll play into the artifice of using pixels as a means to, illustrate characters and things in the environment. Whereas in the 90s, a lot of the pixel art you see was kind of just like that's all they had. That's what they were working with. So they were aiming for realism, or they were aiming for something that looks cartoony, that's relatively high fidelity, and the low res art is just kind of the best they can do, and it produces a completely different look than if like you're just intentionally leaning into, hey, I'm going to draw everything by hand in pixel art. Whereas if you look at Duke Nukem, for example, they use a lot of like actual photography as not even as reference, but like as their sprites, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like it's not that they wanted the game to be a low res pixel art game. It was just they were working within the limits of what they had on hand. So yeah, I mean, it's just a completely different methodology in terms of how we were striving. Visually. In terms of like,
was Blake Stone or anything, or
nope.
Quake or Build Engine stuff? None of that?
Nope. I mean, again, the point at which our inspiration from retro shooters for the visuals stops is like using sprites in a 3D world.
I was pressing F6, but my lighting is so little here that I had to physically look at the button.
Brutal.
Do you have? Let me. Yeah. Okay. So you do have a. Oh wait. Well, you did save. Okay. But yeah. So yeah, the point at which our inspiration stops is that we use sprites in 3D environments. Outside of that, like even then, the only reason why we do that is because I mean that's how you would represent pixel art in a first-person shooter environment. Yeah. So yeah, as far as like the game world and like say some of the narrative, like the alien designs and stuff like that, our biggest inspirations would be games like Halo or Star Wars or
the narrative.
The game is set in the Cthulhu mythos, so there's a lot of like we'll take inspiration from like some more Lovecraftian sources.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I can talk about
if you watch the intro cinematic and some other stuff along with the main character, it's very, very Cthulhu.
Yeah. Do we want to maybe talk about the story then?
Let's rock out.
Let's do it. I think it's actually good. I really like the main character and their quips and stuff. That's what reminded me the most of Duke.
Oh yeah.
And like some of the more environmental interactivity stuff.
Yeah, and I need to specify this. When I say we didn't take inspiration from retro shooters, what I'm specifically talking about the art direction. Gotcha. I'm not saying the game itself. Like the game itself, obviously, it took inspiration from retro shooters. Like, duh. But for like the game's visuals specifically, that's not where we drew our influence.
Like for me, like when I started playing it, the biggest thing was Quake meets Duke was what I was getting. From like the character, the gameplay, stuff like that, kind of.
Yeah, as far as like the game itself goes, I'd say probably. So I mean, the original three. There's too many things we took influence from for the game as a whole. Like Spyro the Dragon is something I will cite as an inspiration for Viscerafest.
There's a lot of
that's funny,
and it's actually not because of the color. Right, but it's like there's such a broad spectrum of things that end up influencing you and inspiring you as you're making something. That for me to like pin down, hey, I just took influence from like, oh, it's a throwback to games like Duke Nukem 3D and Quake. It's like, nah, it's like a game that's like been inspired by like 500 different things, half of which I can't remember because I was inspired by them ages ago because I've been working. So for the audience, because I said this privately, but I didn't say it here. I've been working on this game for 12 years. I began working on it in 2012 when I was 12 years old.
Good Lord.
Yeah. And obviously when I started working on it, I didn't know how to make games. And at that point, early on in development, it was far more of just like a Halo clone, right? So as the project sort of progressed, the range of influences broadened and changed and adapted as my tastes and my influences as a person kind of grew and shifted. When it comes to so if you go back to the area where you started, you have to shoot the thing behind you. But if you go back to the starting room, so there's a thing you shoot out. Yeah, that. So that opens that door. Not that door.
Oh, okay. That door.
Yeah, if you go back, I don't know why I'm still pointing at the screen like it's going to help you. So,
it's all right. We do it all the time. Don't worry.
To the right. To the right.
Over
right.
There,
no,
there,
not that way.
there,
to the
right.
Discord right. Discord right.
There you go. Right there. Right there. Okay. So, I was saying something.
About
long development.
When you were 12.
Yeah.
Like it was at first.
So the primary three sources of inspiration when it comes to this version of the game, as it was initially starting to become a retro shooter, which that point came about probably about 2014, 2015 timeframe. The biggest influences were Doom, Marathon, and Blood. Those were basically the three that sort of kick-started making Viscerafest a retro shooter. At that time point, I was a child, I was a teenager basically, and I couldn't go out and buy my own games. As a consequence of that, I was forced to play free-to-play stuff. And around this era, I had just been introduced to first-person shooters. Prior to 2012, I had no idea what a first-person shooter was. And the very first FPS game I ever played was 2001's Battlefield 1942. But following that...
Because we talked about Battlefield in a little extra thing we had.
Yeah, literally, last couple of days we've talked about it.
Yeah. So
carry on. Yeah, inspirations.
So in 2013, being that I was stuck looking for free-to-play shooters, one of the ones I happened to stumble upon was the shareware version of Doom. And I actually stumbled upon it on Newgrounds because Newgrounds had a Flash version of it that you could play. I don't know how it was working. It was like Doom, but it was like running through like the Adobe Flash Player or something like that. And it actually also had Heretic's shareware version, and it had Hexen's shareware version. I didn't like Hexen or Heretic at the time, and I still don't like Hexen or Heretic. But
that is blasphemy. That is absolutely blasphemy. What?
I have zero experience with either of those games, so.
But anyways,
what company am I rolling in?
So I picked it up, and I kind of slowly. I was kind of getting into it. Unfortunately, that version of the game you had to play keyboard only, which was like the biggest sort of like barrier between me and the game at the time. So what ended up happening was probably about 2015, I got I got the full game, and I managed to play it via SourcePort rather than via this crappy Adobe Flash Newgrounds version of it, and I could actually play it with mouse and keyboard. And at that point, I was like, "Whoa! Like this game is like really fast paced. Like this is really fun. Like in a way that it wasn't before when I was like having to use the arrow keys to turn and the comma and period keys to strafe, But it sort of like captivated me in a way because I was always used to playing first-person shooters in a very like aggressive, push-forward kind of way because that's what I thought was fun. But most of the games I had played up to that point, because they were like free-to-play COD ripoffs, they completely discouraged that kind of play. And so to have a game where it was like, hey, I can play the game this way, like this is a viable means to actually tackle combat encounters, it was like, wow, this is like fun. And so running off of that, I was like, hey, I'll take the first person shooter I'm trying to make and I'll make it more like this. I mean, I'm truncating a lot of stuff, but like there's a lot more that happened that kind of led to this, because the process of how it actually became a retro shooter was a bit more gradual. But yeah, and so from there I ended up, I think I found Blood because of a Watch Mojo video where they were talking about like the top 10 most obscure first-person shooters or whatever, and Blood was one of the games that was listed. And then
that's not obscure. It's not as
well at the time, like back in like 2012, back in 2012, 2013 time frame. Like, how many people like how much of the general public was aware of blood? Like, let's be honest, not many. But then from there, I think I stumbled upon Marathon just like because a gameplay video of it ended up in my YouTube recommended feed. And I was like, oh, what's this? You know, because I was really big into sci-fi stuff when I was younger, especially. Yeah, and so it was kind of like, a game from the creators of Halo, and it's kind of like Doom. That's pretty cool. So all these three kind of were like what initially kickstarted the direction that Viscerafest would head in. My throat is killing me.
Build up.
Ooh. Yeah, so that's an incredibly truncated version of kind of how things kicked off, if you will.
Yeah.
Medium. What's one of your questions, or maybe even Robert, you guys got?
Gosh, they've all been swimming around in my head. I think he's hit quite a few of them. I was going to get annoying. It's like, I'm pretty sure I know, based on the fact there's a lot of elevators and everything's kind of blocky and sci-fi. It's Blake Stone, right? And there was some like, what? Nobody mentions that game. You're right.
I didn't even know what Blake Stone was. So it couldn't have been an influence. Like, I think when I first heard about Blake Stone was when I want to say when G-Man Lives made his video on the demo.
Yeah. I actually first heard about Blake Stone when I watched Medium's video. So it's not a very widely known one.
G-Man,
yeah.
Honestly, I've never heard about it until this very conversation.
Oh, look at there! Look at that! There's something new every day.
Before we started this. Yeah, I was like, who the hell's Blake Stone? Sounds like some Flash Gordon crap.
It's very Flash Gordon-y. It's basic. It's kind of like it was like Apogee's spin on Wolfenstein 3D, basically.
I
mean, there's a little bit more to it than Wolfenstein 3D. Like, for example, the game had a system where it's like basically at the end of every level you have an elevator, and you can go to any level in any order, basically. So it's like if I'm, say, on level 5 of the episode, I can go back to level 1 using the elevator. There's no reason to do that, but you can do it.
Where am I going?
There's an elevator behind you.
I just was there.
I saw.
No, not there. Behind you. No, that's the wrong way.
Okay,
the other way.
Okay.
There's an elevator right there. You see the blue lights.
There you go. Right there. Right there. In front of you. Right in front of you.
Now it's not in front of you, but
now there you go. To the left of the door is a button. Elevator.
Yeah, I knew that. I was just testing you all. That was
yeah. Oh, geez. Okay, so I saw earlier, I was looking on the Steam page, and I saw someone posted a screenshot of a Serious Sam Easter egg in the game where you can find the the bomb. What do they call it? The Serious bomb? Yeah.
Yeah, the Serious bomb.
Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Serious Sam as well.
How many of those have you been, like, how many of those have you hidden around the game? Like, little references like that? Because there's obviously Doom and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I mean, kind of the way I like to frame it, and this kind of leads into some of our story stuff. The way Viscerafest is narratively laid out, the idea is basically the game sort of baits you into thinking that it's going to be just kind of any normal standard retro shooter style experience, where it's just tongue-in-cheek, references everywhere, very silly, very lighthearted, very goofy. And then as the narrative progresses, we kind of peel the curtain back and things get a bit more serious. So in the early game, there's a lot of Easter eggs, there's a lot of references, and I mean, even baked into the game's story, like the game's story itself is kind of an homage and a reference to retro first-person shooters.
I just thought it was a love story. That was all. Some freaky lady and her freaky man needed to get married, and you had to help it.
Yeah, but so I mean, the entire game story is written as an homage to retro shooters, and it's baked into almost every aspect of the game. there's a degree to where there are certain parts of the game's narrative where we'll start taking things more seriously. Particularly in chapters 2 and 3, there's a big tonal shift that happens. But yeah. So I mean, like, so for example, like you have a ton of one-liners and stuff that are direct references to games like Blood and Quake and Duke Nukem. I mean, not Quake. Quake doesn't have any one-liners. The Shadow Warrior, Duke Nukem 3D, Ion Fury. I like basically like anything.
Quake has one-liners. One line. It has.
Oh, actually, if you fall into like the ass or something, you get like the most annoying dying sound ever.
They're screaming.
My volume was up, man, and it was like in the middle of the night, and I went into like some acid, and they had Trent Reznor scream, and he was literally like and I'm like, whoa, volume down.
Yeah, they were actually recording one of his acid trips for that very sound.
I got Pinky. Where am I headed to? Where's the pink door? Ooh, hey.
It's below you. Actually, wait, so don't use the pink key, but drop down. Yeah. Drop down that hole. Don't go through that door. Don't do it. Okay, go back to the main big arena room. There's a pink door in that room. The keys in the game are one-use items, so there are a couple of secrets where it's like, hey, there are 2 key doors. One's mandatory for progression, and one's kind of tucked away to the side where you might miss it.
Oh, I killed him. Oh.
Yeah, but there's you switch to the pung cannon, which is the number 3 key, or should be.
What?
Okay, so switch to the weapon, the pung cannon. There's a cracked wall in this room. So yeah, right in front of you.
Right there?
Yep.
Very slight.
It's very subtle. It is hard to notice.
It was hard to see, yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's
cool. Wait, what? Is that Duke Nukem?
Nice.
You can't hear it on stream, but she says, I bet you wish you had that power armor right about now, huh?
Nice. A reference to Forever.
Yeah, I hate that line from Duke Nukem Forever.
But doesn't he go like power armors for pussies or something like that?
Yeah, it's such a stupid line. But
I mean, you gotta give him props. He doesn't wear armor, but hey,
Yeah, but so yeah. So I think. So as far as references go,
it's Arnold incarnate.
There's a ton sprinkled in the game. There's stuff like that where you can find Duke Nukem's head.
Yeah.
There's you can find the Ranger's axe in a secret in episode 2. There's a short sequence in episode 3 where Carolyn hums the song "I Choose the Stairs" from Rise of the Triad. There's what's another good example?
That one she does at the very beginning, where she keeps going.
How do you decide what Easter eggs?
Is it the same thing?
How do you decide
There's
what
some
Easter
songs
eggs
she
to
does
put in?
like 3 verses of.
Oh no! So I mean, if you stand still, like if you just don't move, she'll sing. But a lot of it's just like old. I mean, some of the songs are songs Caleb sings from Blood, but there's a lot of them that are just like old timey, like 1960s, 1930s songs.
Gotcha. Okay.
Just kind of. Yeah, just some kind of like show tunes
like
and stuff.
The guns feel amazing in this game. I'll give you that. Like, I love the shotguns, all of them. They're all like punchy as hell,
and they feel much better now in the new version of the game.
I'm excited because I think the visual feedback and auditory feedback of the weapons is pretty fantastic already. So they're even better now. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah.
Crap!
You forgot to save. Yeah.
I'm totally lost now. I've forgotten the progression.
Yeah. So there's a blue door. Yeah, so basically any door that has blue lights on it is like you can open it without a key. So not in this room, but to your left, right there, straight ahead, through the green key door. Or what was the green key door? Yeah. Honestly, like, I can't tell you guys enough. Like, looking back at the old stuff in chapter 1 makes me wince a little bit because I'm just like, oh man, this looks rough.
I bet you're just like, I can't wait for people to see the new chapter 1.
Yeah, it genuinely hurts me looking at old stuff for the game because like so much has been improved that it's like I'm almost afraid when people tell me they're gonna buy my game and play it. Because I'm just like, can't you just wait until it's done? Because I'm just like, so much has been like, again, like there's almost no aspect of the game that isn't being that either hasn't been refined or isn't in the process of being refined.
Yeah.
And because of that, it's like I look at the older versions of the game, I'm like, this is just objectively worse. And I want people to have like the maximum chance of enjoying what they're playing. And so it's frustrating for me, like watching like this old gameplay because I'm like, like I forgot how rough some of this stuff is and how much better it is now by comparison.
And what do you think? Has the overall reception been pretty good?
I mean, we're sitting at like 92% positive on Steam, I think. I think, I mean, generally, most of the complaints are things like, oh, I don't have any ammo, or oh, I don't have, I suck at video games. It literally
tells you to not rely. Yeah. It tells you to not rely on ammo. It literally
which is why you're out of ammo right now.
What the hell?
Just real quick, Awesreek, I thought the game did a pretty good job of setting up its parameters without being pushy or obscure about it. I thought it was pretty obvious. It was like, punch things, and if you can shoot them, that's great. But
so for example, enemies like the Thunder, for Hyper. So enemies like the Thunderbirds, which are those little melee guys who rush you and kind of like go, Hwah! So for that enemy type, you're going to want to use the uppercut against them. That'll save you a lot of ammo. Like, you can kill crowds of that enemy type with your punch, with like a single punch. Like that guy right there on
this guy?
Yeah, like you can kill crowds of them with a single punch. So it's a little bit of a waste of ammo to kill them with your weapon.
It also takes more ammo to kill them than like some of the other enemies too.
Oh yeah.
So it's really incentivized that you hit them versus shoot them.
Yeah, and something like that is a great example of an area where it's like, hey, like, so in the current game with a tutorialization, the punching is all done in one tutorial, whereas now it's broken up into multiple tutorials where we have one tutorial that teaches you about the standard left and right hook, and then we have another tutorial that teaches you about the uppercut, where it's much better to hold, charge the uppercut, and punch through to deal with enemies, or to deal with like low-tier fodder enemies because you can one-shot them with it. And then like, so for some tankier enemies or whatever, you might want to just throw in some quick jabs or whatever. And there's actually invincibility frames when you're using the uppercut. So you actually, so it makes it easier for you to kind of get in and get out quick with some of the lower tier melee enemies like him.
What about adding kicks in? Not just punch?
No, I mean, you can see your legs. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah, actually, I didn't even notice that you could until he looked down earlier, and I was like, oh, nice. You can see your legs. I didn't expect that.
You can also turn off your legs if you're a monster.
Huh. Good choice, yeah.
But, because for some reason, some people don't like it. I guess because they think it looks goofy. But yeah, no. So but that's a great example. So it's like as tutorialization, we do a better job of teaching the player how to use what we've given them, and we're doing it in a way that feels less intrusive. So players will feel less inclined to skip it. And even if they do skip it, because we have the little video clips that show you how to play the game, we do it generally like even if you just get a glimpse of like, say, what I've done in order to like what I've done in the little video clip to show you how to play, that alone will leave you more informed than if you just like kind of like skim read through some text, right? Because because it's one thing if you read something, it's another thing if you're shown how to do something. Right. Especially in a game that's like, it's you interacting with it. It's like if I tell you, hey, this is how you carve a boat out of wood versus, hey, let me show you how to carve a boat out of wood. It's going to give you a much better idea of how to actually do the thing.
Of course. Actually,
yeah. And so like little changes like that I think really help the people who are really struggling with the game. And just in general, like there are a lot of other design changes we've made that'll do things like incentivize you to be more aggressive, or will provide you with, or it will give you a clearer idea of, hey, use this weapon here, don't use this weapon here. Like for example, with the melee resistant enemies that I mentioned earlier, in the current version of the game, you can't tell the melee resistant enemies apart from the non-melee resistant enemies. Now they have purple armor or purple skin, so you have a very clear like visual element that makes you go, hey, that enemy's melee resistant. And not only that, but when you punch a melee resistant enemy, they are no longer stunned by that melee attack. And there's a clear like metallic audio cue where when you punch them, some sparks will fly off, and you hear like a metal ting to let you know, like, hey, punching this enemy isn't going to do very much. So it just kind of...
That's a nice improvement,
Yeah, it gives you more feedback that gives you a better and more informed idea of how you should be playing the game.
Nice.
So, while you've been working on Chapter 3, what are there any boomer shooters or other FPS games or anything you've been playing, and any downtime you've had?
I mean, I play games pretty frequently. Like I'll typically play like a game usually like every other day. Like I'll typically like have an hour or two set aside to play something.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, I love Ion Fury. I played Ion Fury Aftershock. I just played Wrath, Eon of Ruin. Okay. Which
yeah,
we played that with Kirk.
Yeah,
I have some thoughts on it.
What are those thoughts? Go for it.
Please.
So for some context, I loved the game when it was in its early access period. I thought it was a great game, and I still think it's a great game, but it's a very frustrating game because there were a lot of decisions that they made in the wake of their early access period that I think have really harmed the final product. In particular, the final game makes terrible use of its enemy roster. The game just, there are two enemies in particular that the game spams at you, and those are the wretches and the invaders. There are so many encounters that are nothing but wretches and invaders. Like it is obnoxious. Like there's a point where I think the level is called, it's in episode 3, and the map is called it's like Blood something. I can't remember what it's called, but like that level, there just comes a point where it's like that entire level is like basically, I think a great way to put it is like this. Wrath is structured in such a way similar to something like TNT Evolution from Doom, where imagine if you were playing through Doom and almost every combat encounter is nothing but you fighting zombie men and imps, and then occasionally you might get to fight a cacodemon or two, and occasionally you might get to fight a mancubus, but most of the time you're just fighting zombie men and imps. It becomes exhausting because it's nothing but low-tier fodder enemies that you can blink through. And I should mention, this is only a problem if you're playing on a difficulty that's hard, medium, or easy. If you're playing on one of those 3 difficulties, it's only a problem there. It's not a problem on the game's Outlander difficulty. However, one of the wonderful decisions that they decided to make in the wake of the game being in early access is that now you have to play through the entire game once before you're allowed to play on Outlander difficulty. So I'm basically, it's like I had to play through a much worse version of the game before I got the chance to play on a much better version of the game. And even then, Outlander difficulty was completely broken on release, where it was using the hard difficulty's enemy spawns. So basically, I was just playing on a slightly version of the hard difficulty until this most recent patch.
Wow. It seems like on the whole that it's been received relatively well, though.
I mean, it's I think a great way to put it is like this. Wrath is a wonderful game in terms of its individual components. It has wonderful weapons. It has a wonderful enemy roster. It has amazing level design. But personally, I feel the game does a very poor job of actually taking advantage of its enemy roster in particular, where the game could have far more interesting and far more fun combat encounters, but the game just chooses not to for some reason. And that's really frustrating. Like, there's an enemy, and this drives me insane. There's an enemy in the game called the Keepers. And what the Keepers do is they don't attack the player, but what they'll do is they'll go up to next to other enemies and they'll deploy a shield around the enemy in order to protect them as that enemy attacks you. It's a really cool idea, a really fascinating enemy type. On hard difficulty, there are only 4 of them you get to fight in the entire game.
That's crazy, yeah.
Like, it's just a normal enemy.
Overkill as well.
It's just a normal enemy type. Like, it's not it's not like a mini boss or something like that.
Right.
It's just a standard enemy. Like, you can easily kill him with like
the floor's lava. Crap.
Yeah.
They're only it's crazy. Like, this enemy type just doesn't get used. Why? Yeah. Like, there's no reason. Like, stuff like that
like a kind of infuriating thing if like you have a pretty decent roster of enemies and then you don't adequately use them, or you have to ramp up the difficulty with them. Yeah, I haven't played Wrath myself. I've only seen a few reviews and watched Robert play it for our episode with Kirk. But yeah, I mean, I've seen a few different like little criticisms about it, and that's definitely a weird one, right? Like, that's like why would you do that? You know, have like this enemy variety and not use them? I don't know, but
it's really
an outlier problem too. Usually it's the opposite. Usually it's the overused, the frustrating enemies, or something like that. The too many arch files or something.
Oh, you're gonna love chapter
or like how a lot of games will like introduce a new enemy as a boss, or like use them as another enemy and like kind of start just piling them on. I know some people love or hate that. So
yeah, I mean, I'm personally kind of, there's a ladder you complete. I'm personally the kind of guy where I'm like, I love it when you'll have, say, you'll introduce, say, like the Mancubus in Doom or whatever, right? And at first, you'll fight maybe one Mancubus, but as the game progresses, like, you get to a point where it's just kind of normal to see like 4, 5, 6 Mancubuses, because you've gotten to the point where it's like, hey, you have more powerful weapons now.
Yeah.
Hey, you have, like, your skill has grown. We're gonna throw more challenging encounters at you. These enemies that used to be special and unique, now they're just regular Joes because you're powerful enough to take them on. You've got the skill to conquer what we're throwing at you now. And in Wrath, it's like, hey, there's an enemy type called the Stricken. It's like this frog that spits acidic balls at you, right? And it's like, you'll see them like every now and again. And so you're kind of waiting for that point in the game where it's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get to fight like 4 of these guys all at once. It is as other enemies are mixed into these like grandiose encounters, because the levels are giant and they have these massive arenas. So surely there's this point that's going to come where it's like, yeah, this is just a normal enemy I'm going to be fighting by the dozens or whatever. But no, it's like, you don't even, you keep ignoring a ladder.
I thought
it was on the side that you came from the first time.
Yeah.
But what is just quickly? I think we're about to have to wrap up pretty soon. What is what do you think the main thing that makes Viscerafest stick out over other games in the subgenre of boomer shooters now?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say, I do love Wrath. Like, Wrath is a great game. I don't want to like come across like I'm a bitter old man, like shaking my fist at the sky. I need to like let's appreciate something for a fact. The developers tortured themselves with one of the worst engines you could make a modern game on.
Right.
And like it's an incredible technical marvel. It's a wonderful game. With some, for me, really frustrating decisions. So you keep ignoring, it's right there.
You got there.
So,
no. Oh, I can do this.
So it's a wonderful game. And I don't want to give people the impression that I hate it or anything. But it's a game where it's like, there are some games where I'm like, this is a good game that I want to be amazing, and it's so close to being amazing that it makes me angry. Like, it's so close to being so awesome, and all they would have to do is tweak these 1 or 2 things. And that's where Wrath is for me, where it's like, it frustrates me how close to greatness it is.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm helping myself here.
We got you.
But I mean, I like, honestly, like, pick up Wrath. It is a good game. I would highly recommend it. There are just a couple of things, and for a lot of people, like, the things I'm complaining about right now, don't even bother them. It's just with games like Wrath, I am particularly passionate about both the things I like about it and the things I don't like about it. But yeah, so as far as Viscerafest goes, I didn't even get to talk about half the things I wanted to.
That happens.
There's always next time.
And that's exactly why you need to come on again.
When it's finished.
Yeah, but as far as things that make Viscerafest unique, I mean, within the realm of retro first-person shooters in particular, there's not really any great emphasis on the narrative or the world or the story, and there is in Viscerafest. We've effectively tried. I structured the game with the understanding most people coming into Viscerafest, they're not going to care about the story. So if we're going to get them interested in the story, it's something we're going to have to do throughout the course of time. So as the game's narrative sort of develops, where initially early on, it sort of frames it like you would expect it. Like, it's going to be just any other normal standard retro shooter style story. It's like the story is just something that's goofy, silly, and throwaway. And as it develops, it becomes something far more compelling. So you have that, which is very different from most other retro shooters. I mean, if you compare it to something like Ion Fury, where the story got literally cut from the entire game.
Right.
I'm not kidding. So one of the developers for Ion Fury told me, basically all of the lines in the game were written the night before they were recorded. Like, all of the narrative lines for example, like Dr. Haskell, all of Dr. Haskell's lines were written the night before they were recorded. Not the one-liners and stuff, but like the story content, right? So if you've ever felt like, hey, Ion Fury kind of has a story and kind of doesn't, that's why. Because they said there came a point in development where they were like, hey, we could either flesh out the story or we could polish up the game. We're going to polish up the game, and the story is kind of an afterthought. And that's kind of how most retro shooters treat their narrative.
It looks like Phantom Fury is going to have a lot more of a story narrative focus, but that also kind of goes along with the territory of being very much Half-Life inspired, more so than Duke Nukem.
Well, it's not really Half-Life inspired. It's basically, like, functionally, it is basically the game Duke Nukem Forever was intended to be.
Right.
It is 3D Realm saying, hey, that game we never got to make, we're gonna make it now. Or, I mean, it depends.
It's a better time than ever.
Spin-off character.
As far as other things go, I mean, again, kind of like I mentioned earlier, what makes Viscerafest unique is that it takes everything that I personally enjoy about retro shooters and pushes them into the forefront in a way most other retro shooters don't. I've actually had the game compared to Doom Eternal a lot, which wasn't intentional, but I'm very happy they made some of the creative decisions they made on Doom Eternal. But it's a game that says, hey, look, resource management is something you need to think about. Enemy prioritization, it's something you need to think about. What weapons you're going to use against what enemies, something you need to think about. And the game's going to be much harder if you're not engaging with the game systems in that way. It's a game that it's structurally very different from a game like Doom Eternal, because Doom Eternal has a very non-fluid, like, linear structure where it's like, hey, it's like set piece arena, set piece arena, set piece arena. It has a very, again, just a generally linear structure, whereas Viscerafest retains the more fluid, the pacing is controlled by the player aspect of most classic shooters, while still maintaining that, hey, we're going to ask you to engage with our game in a certain way. We're going to ask you to engage with our systems in a certain way. Yeah. We want you to think. We want you to strategize. We don't want you to come into this game and play it like it's just a mindless first-person shooter.
This game definitely keeps you engaged, that's for sure.
It's the closest thing you've got to a thinking man's game when it comes to FPS game.
Yeah, when it comes to a boomer shooter inspired kind of thing, it really requires a lot more brain power in the process than, playing, I don't know, for example, even like the original Doom or I'll even go as far as say like Red Faction that I was playing for the last episode. You know, you don't require nearly as much thinking as something like this does, especially on the fly thinking, which I think that the closest thing it has in common is Doom Eternal for sure.
Yeah, I like the way Kirk, who I think you guys actually interviewed very recently. Yeah. I like the way he kind of put it in his video review where he's like, if Dusk is like I don't know, like a cold brew beer, Viscerafest is like a shot of whiskey. Yeah. Like it's just a distillation of everything retro shooters already have, kind of purified and focused in such a way that sets it apart from most other retro shooters, where it's in essence like, here's all of the ideas that make a retro shooter. Let's push these to the forefront. Let's make this like what the game is to its core, and you have to engage with and think about these things.
I definitely think it stands out from the crowd for sure, 100%. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But hey man, it was than ever now. Yeah, it was awesome having you on, by the way, and thanks for joining us. Hope you can join us again for sure. We'll just have our little
incredibly insightful.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, we know you didn't get all that you wanted to get out, but we still got a lot, and we all learned a lot more about the game than we knew before.
Yeah. My camera is like going out of focus.
Just unfocused. Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that, but yeah, I'll say it is. I feel like I've said nothing. I feel like I have conveyed absolutely nothing to you guys because I'm like, oh my gosh.
You covered all of our questions and more, and you covered a lot of development and all kinds of stuff. So, hey, we got a lot in here, but we definitely love to have you on again. No problem. Where can we find you, by the way? Where can everybody else find you? Discord, Twitter, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so, I mean, we have a Viscerafest Discord if you'd like to join us there. I mean, you can access it through our Twitter. I think there might be a few links on Steam where it's like in the Steam forums discussions, there'll be like a forum that's like a link to our Discord, so you can find us there. If you go at Viscerafest, which is VISCERAFESE or
EST.
EST. I'm having a stroke here. If you go at Viscerafest, I'm pretty sure it's just at Viscerafest on Twitter. It might be Viscerafest. Yeah, so it's just at Viscerafest on Twitter. Yeah, it's just
at Viscerafest, yeah.
Yeah, and then I should mention, one of the unsung heroes of Viscerafest is my bud Elijah, who I thought I was going to be able to talk about today. I didn't get to. But he like Viscerafest would not be possible without him. He's our lead programmer. He's done so much for the project. I love the man. I can't wait to meet him in person one day. He lives in Canada, and I'm in filthy little Wisconsin. But I'd love to I want to meet him in person someday. He's such an awesome guy, and he's done so much work and sacrificed so much for the project. Like, I genuinely can't thank him enough. I believe he's just at Fireplant Games on Twitter.
Okay.
So you can follow him there as well. Awesome brother in Christ. And so yeah.
Awesome.
And we have a YouTube channel called Acid Man Games.
Yeah. Acid Man Games. You can, of course, you can find me at Lord of the RPG on Twitter or X, and Deadforge on YouTube. And where can we find you, Medium?
Well, for the time being, pending a rebrand, possibly, I am HyFunk Medium on Twitter, X, whatever name it goes by, formerly as.
It's Twitter.
Or you can find me at good old high-functioning Medium.
It's super funny. I have a plugin that's like, it's called Tweak New Twitter or something like that. So I completely forget the website is even called X, because for me, it still has the Twitter icon.
That's funny. Yeah. And where can we find HyperVerse, Robert?
You can find HyperVerse on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and for those of you a little more corporate, we're on LinkedIn as well. Yeah, hit me up at LinkedIn.
All right, it was awesome having a conversation. It was awesome having you on, and as always, stay booming, everybody.